Hey, sports fans. I finally went and picked up all my trinkets. You can see by my fingers they're really small. But I'll give you a little idea of what we got here. So this is the simplest piece. Just came out like a little anvil or like a flower vase or something. This is where the laser started. You can see it just, the stripes are the laser going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Then, as it builds up, it just continues to add powder and laser another layer. So to give you an idea how that works, look at this little black line. Imagine this whole blue paper was a 1 millimeter thick super alloy powder. The laser would come in on the first pass and go zzz, and now you have a 1 millimeter thick solid piece. The next layer, the table drops 1 millimeter. A wiper wipes a whole pass, another 1 millimeter of powder, and the laser goes zzz, but this time it adds a zzz. So the piece that dropped down, there'll be a little gap eventually below this leg. So you build up an inch and then you start adding this, and later you add this, and then later you add another bit. And so eventually you build up a part out of one laser melt. And why that stuff is cool, so you got a basic solid piece, not very exciting. One other feature is, Jono asked me, is that a stamping in there? No, so you see right in the bottom of there, it's got that rough surface. That's lasered in, so you don't even have to mark the part later. You just laser the part number right in there, so that would say C09, I guess. But what it's good for so far is, like, here's a blade. That thing is pretty cool in its dimensions. Now, so far, the laser leaves a very tough, rough surface. But this is ready to polish and, clean up. And now you've got a little impeller or a blade or something, yeah? Now imagine in the old days, you'd start with a solid piece of super alloy, and then you'd cut away all the parts you don't want. So now, instead of cutting away a bunch of parts and throwing it away, you just use exactly how much of this powder you need. And by the way, this is a GE Secret super alloy. I have no idea what it's cost or what it's made of, but I'm assured you can't run down to Lowe's and buy this shit. Here's a little more complicated thing. It's a kind of a worm gear. But what they did is they needed a hole in it. So imagine that laser, you built the outside, it's got a hole in it. This is where the laser started. You can see the base where there's very dense, closely spaced lasering. That's kind of cool. But here's the real cool stuff. So this is a honeycomb cell that's one piece, and it's solid. So the end cap is solid, right? All those little ribs, everything was built just 1 millimeter at a time with that laser. Why is that important? Well, radiators, oil coolers, fuel heaters, anything where you need to do heat transfer, the old day you'd grab a bunch of copper pipes or aluminum pipes and you'd make an end piece, and each little pipe would be brazed in there. Each little tube would be a separate tube and a separate braze. Obviously hard to manufacture, but also a bazillion opportunities to spring a leak. This thing is solid. It will never leak. It may crack, but if you make radiators out of this, it's one little melt, and it's super easy to do, and saves you time. So that's really cool. We are actually making radiators out of this, but remember that surface finish problem, no big deal on a radiator because you really don't need a super smooth internal surface on a radiator. So this is another little sort of maze that they made. You can put holes, you can make holes in the side of it, things like that. Again, solid end piece. But this is the piece de la resistance. This is made from one laser melt. These aren't separate parts that were put together. Josh immediately saw it and said, I want this. I want a, what do they call them? Finger spinner or spinner. But yeah, so this is a planetary gear is what they call this. But if you look carefully, it's not a square gear. It is a spur gear, or excuse me, a worm gear like this. So you don't have to cut straight sides. You just build it in a curve. You build the matching one in a curve. The laser leaves a tiny gap when it starts building the gears, right? So you don't even have to actually install it together. You build the retention piece in there. And oh, by the way, if we want the gear to be hollow, we just make it hollow. If we want the gear to be honeycombed inside, we make it honeycomb. Is that so cool or what? Now here obviously is the starting surface. Get the light not to reflect because that's the bottom. You can tell it's very smooth on the bottom where the laser starts. So that's kind of cool. And again, this is what I like. Powered by Predix, which is our super secret shit for making this. And again, that's not stamped in there. That is lasered. Pretty fucking cool stuff. This little jewel, that was my $250 impulse. But it was for charity. And it's super finger spinner. What's that they call it? Got myself a $1 million finger spinner. All right, that's me. For you guys who like tech, hope you like it.